that 5 seconds?
Lights and action.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the All Candidates meeting tonight, and thank you for coming. My name is Nora Beattie, and I am the co-chair of the Grey Bruce Health Coalition, and I have with me David Walton, who is with the Climate Action Team Owen Sound, and we're going to be your moderators for tonight's questions and events. First of all, the land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, known collectively as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. We endeavor to make reconciliation a reality by accepting our cultural differences and working in harmony with the Saugeen Ojibwe to smooth the path before us. We need to learn from the traditional keepers of the land that we are living on. As the earth sustains us, we in turn must sustain the earth, using only just enough. We need to shift from thinking we have a right to the resources of the land to having the responsibility to care for the land. So thank you for coming tonight to learn about the views of our candidates on the vital issues of healthcare, climate change, health, and other issues raised in your questions. First, a few housekeeping matters. The Harmony Center is a 160-year-old historic building that was preserved by the community for the community. It is owned and operated by a charitable corporation and governed by a board of community members. Please note that there is an accessible washroom just out the doors here to my left, off of the foyer, and other washrooms are out this door, straight up a few stairs, straight across. You'll see a big white sign saying washrooms. So thank you to all of the candidates who are here tonight to share their perspectives and party's platform on climate change, healthcare, and other issues. All candidates were invited to attend. The following candidates declined: Michael Butt and Paul Vickers. The candidates are seated in random order, and the order of answering questions will be rotated to ensure fairness.
Good evening. Can everybody hear back there? Is it all good?
Right, closer?
Yep. Okay. And we'll ask the candidates to not shuffle their mics around when they're answering questions. Got to make extra noise. Okay, we're going to begin with brief introductions. Limited to 2 minutes each. They were followed by 2 questions on healthcare and 2 on climate change, prepared by the organizers. Candidates will respond to all questions and be limited to 1.5 minutes per answer. And at the end, the candidates will have 1.5 minutes for closing remarks. And our timekeeper down there, Danuta, has a little stop sign and a 30-second warning to let them know that their time is running out. For the second half of the evening, questions will be asked that have been submitted in writing by audience members. Questions submitted when you entered have been organized by our panel to avoid duplication and will be given to the moderators. If you do not already submit a question, paper and pencils are available, and by raising your hand, somebody will bring them to you and pick up your question. A candidate may choose to not answer a question by saying pass. If answers appear to totally be off topic, the moderator may ask the candidate to refocus their answer, but extra time will not be given. As moderators, we ask all of you to be respectful. Outbursts and abusive behavior will not be tolerated. So we will begin by letting the candidates introduce themselves. We have Joel Lohead from Green Party, James Harris from NDP, Selwyn Hicks from the Liberal, Vince Grimaldi from the New Blue Party, and Ann Gillis from the, I can't quite remember all the name of your party, but I'll let you do that. Okay, so we'll start with Joel.
Nothing. Is Did it just cut out? Can you hear me now? Can't hear. Is that mic working now? I'll just keep checking until it maybe is it on? I'm speaking as closely into it as I possibly can. How's that? Is it? It's better the further I am. It's better the further I am away from it for some reason. Is that better? Okay, so then I'll sit back here and I'll speak. So hello, I'm Joel Lohead, and I'm your Green Party candidate here in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. A little bit about me. I live in Kimberley, the Beaver Valley, and in 2022, I was elected to council in a municipality of Grey Highlands, and I decided to run for council. Because we're facing a lot of development pressures where I am in the municipality of Grey Highlands, and where I am in particular right there in the beautiful, relatively untouched Beaver Valley. And I really felt like I needed to step up, and I needed to be a voice and be active for my community and for the natural spaces themselves. And so I ran, and I was successful, and I've been on council there ever since, and I've been fighting for our natural spaces and our ecosystems there ever since. And I also feel very strongly about public services, making sure that our people are taken care of, that our communities are vibrant, that we have vibrant community centers, that they don't get shut, that we have arenas that are open, that we have green spaces, and that we have safe communities, safe streets for our kids. I have a 4-year-old as well. So I ran for the, I started volunteering with the Green Party in 2007 here in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound, and some of you might remember that was a historic campaign. That was Shane Jolly's campaign, in which the Greens came second for the first time anywhere in Canada, right here in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound, and it planted a seed in me. I thought the Greens can and will win this riding, and I would very much like to be your Green MPP at Queen's Park.
James Harris for the NDP.
Thank you. For decades, we've been sending people to sit with the PCs at Queen's Park, and I have to ask, how has it benefited us? We've lost the railways, we've lost manufacturing, we've lost jobs. We keep losing more and more healthcare services, grocery prices keep going up, it's next to impossible to find an affordable place to live, things are bad, and it feels like it's only going to get worse. Well, I feel like it's time for a change. My name is James Harris. I'm running with the Ontario NDP, and I want to be that change. Because where there's a concern for farmland, our groundwater, our wetlands, our floodplains, we are going to restore the power of the Conservation Authority. Where farmers are worried about their livelihood, we are going to remove the cap to the risk management program and stop creeping urbanization. Where people are looking for a doctor, we will work to get us more family health teams and reverse the cuts to rural healthcare services. Where people are in the streets, we're going to get them permanent place to live, to call home, with 60,000 new supportive housing units province-wide. Where people are looking for a place to live, the NDP has a plan with Homes Ontario to get people into an affordable home. And where people are struggling to put food on the table, we would work to make sure that there's a monthly grocery rebate to help with people who are struggling. And where people are worried about how prices always seem to be going up, we are going to create a new consumer watchdog to protect us all from price gouging. Where public education has been cut and schools have been underfunded, failing our children, we will work with our educators to invest in the future of our children's education. And where municipalities are struggling to upload, we will upload the services that make sense back to the province while making sure the funding formula for municipalities allow them to look after things like roads, bridges, sewers, and hiring environmentalists. Thank you, Grey Bruce Climate Action Network and Grey Bruce Health Coalition. I hope I can communicate well today what I and the Ontario NDP will do for the people of Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Selwyn Hicks for the Liberals.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Selwyn Hicks. I'm from Hanover, Ontario. I'm a lawyer, and I'm the Ontario Liberal Party candidate. My wife and I have a small law office that we operate out of Hanover, and we have for children. I want to thank all of you for attending this evening, and I want to thank the organizers as well for putting this event together. To the organizers of tonight's debate, those in attendance or watching online, and to my fellow candidates and their volunteers, I just want to say how sorry I am that Paul Vickers, your PC candidate, is not here tonight. Seeking elected office is a very public job application. On February 27th, you're hiring one of us to work for you. You get to decide. You get to vote. And it's a very important role you're entrusting in us because things need to get better. Without Paul, though, tonight won't be as much of a debate. This is my 5th all candidates debate this campaign, and I've heard enough to know that most of us believe that things need to change. We all agree, except Paul. Paul is okay with closed emergency rooms, overcrowded hospitals, an affordability crisis, a housing crisis, and inaction on climate initiatives. I'm not, and neither are the rest of us. But on what change we want and how we want to get there, I fundamentally disagree with Anne, Vince, Matt, and Michael. I do not share intolerance. I reject their values, and I don't want the kind of change that they're offering. The parties that Joel and James represent at least have a plan for change. They will make their case tonight, as I will, but it won't change unless we vote for change. So what should you look for tonight? You should look for the candidate that has experience. You look for a candidate that's ready on day one, someone who is tolerant, and someone who will amplify your voice. I say to Paul Vickers, if you don't show up for the interview, you don't get the job. I'm Selwyn Hicks. Thank you. I'm Selwyn Hicks, and I'm applying for the position of being your MPP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Vince Grimaldi.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I was raised in Niagara region. I moved up here 6 years ago. I was raised in a traditional European household with the values of family, faith, respect, and hard working. These principles I take with me every day. My journey's taken me through university and college, followed by a fulfilling career in Western University Hospital, and later on ventured out to the film and music industry. Today, I live here in Desborough. I run a small upcycling business where I pour most of my passion into designing and developing free energy products. Shortly after I moved up here, I noticed I started following politics and noticed that government outreach and the relentless prioritization over profit over people kind of drove me a little crazy. So I sought out to find a political party that kind of valued the same stuff I did, and that's how I ended up with the New Blue Ontario Party. They have a commitment to integrity, effective governance made them undeniable choice for me. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see such a full house. Thank you for coming. My name's Ann Gillies. I grew up in Meaford, so there's a few Meafordites here tonight. And what a beautiful place to grow up in, what a beautiful place to live, and what a beautiful riding that we have. And I want to keep it that way. My parents worked hard, and I ended up then finally marrying a man from Dundalk, a farmer. So I've been down there since then. We have 6 children, 12 grandchildren. I completed my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD, which is in the philosophy of professional counseling, which means it's a degree, double degree in theology and psychology, so that I could treat individuals that were struggling with very complex traumatic issues, mostly people who had suffered chronic sexual abuse in their childhood. So I have a long history of doing that. I loved my work. I retired from that in 2019. But I started writing, I think my first book was published 2016, and I've written 6 books, 5 of them on the issue of gender and sexuality, and the last one is called Ultimate Deception, the truth of gender-affirming care. This is the area of my specialization and my understanding and my research for many years. So I'm very pleased to run for the Stop the New Sex Ed Agenda Party, because it's what they're focused on.
No? Is this okay? Hello? Is this one working?
Yeah, you're welcome to.
That was nice.
Is that, do you want to?
Bring it over? Sure. Yeah, this one. All right. We're going to move on for 4 questions from the organizers. The first 2 will be regarding health care, and Joe Lowhead will start the answering with him. So the first question is, Ontario consistently ranks dead last among the provinces in funding for public health care overall and in funding for public hospitals and beds. Services have been cut and hundreds of hospitals have gone into debt, while funds have increasingly privatized our health system. Will you commit to improving funding for public, not private, health care, and do you have concrete plans for how you would do this? Joel?
Sure. So first off, I want to address something that Mr. Hicks just said, which is that we need real change, which I completely agree. 150 years in Ontario, we've had either a conservative or a liberal government, more or less. So if you want real change, vote for a party that's a real change. Let's start with that. And yes, it's absolutely tragic that we're dead last in Ontario for public healthcare funding, and it shouldn't be that way. We're the wealthiest province. We should be first, right? We have the highest needs as well. And the other thing that's so striking about this is it's actually less expensive to invest in healthcare than it is to not invest in healthcare, right? It saves money long term when people are taken care of up front. I've already started this work. I've sat down with physicians in Markdale and in Lions Head and in Owen Sound. I've sat down with nurse practitioners, I've sat down with nurses, I've sat down with hospitalists and administrators, and every single one of them agrees, as I agree, that healthcare absolutely needs to be not-for-profit, full stop. Full stop. It's less expensive, it's more humane. And so what I will do as your Green MPP is I will sit with the people who know best and I will formulate a plan for our riding, because that's exactly how Greens work. Thank you.
And James Harris, will you answer, please?
Yeah, the NP, we are glad to invest in Ontario's public health care. We will get back to building out Ontario's public hospital network
and stop the privatization of the healthcare services. We will fund hospitals to keep operating rooms on in evenings and on weekends instead of redirecting funds to private for-profit surgical centers. We're going to ensure that every Ontarian has a family doctor with our family health guarantee. We will add 3,500 more doctors to the primary care system, and we will hire more nurse practitioners, healthcare workers, and support staff to invest invest in publicly funded, publicly delivered healthcare. We will invest $4.1 billion over the next 4 years to connect people to team-based primary care close to home.
Thank you. 1,000 people lined up in the frigid cold in Walkerton, Ontario for the chance at a doctor. That is shameful in my Ontario. Doug Ford promised to end hallway medicine, and the get it done guy didn't get it done. Rural hospitals are being targeted for closures almost routinely, and this seems to be acceptable. Privatization plan well on its way. Just look at the nursing system. Your Ontario Liberal Party is going to see to it that every person in Ontario has a doctor within the next 4 years. We're going to create 2 new medical schools and double the spaces in those schools in residency. We're going to deliver team-based care with evening and weekend appointments, integrated home care for seniors, and of course, accessible mental health care, especially for our youth. We're going to add at least 1,200 qualified and experienced internationally trained doctors over 4 years. And of course, we're going to eliminate fax machines, enhance virtual care, introduce centralized referrals, and make the work of a doctor a lot easier.
Let's start with sensible government. Let's get our relocated to areas that we need. Hire our nurses back, control our immigration, and you'll find that your health care will start to come back to somewhat normal. Thanks.
Thank you. I believe that Ontario should have the same funding per capita as the other provinces. That only makes sense. But how that funding is spent needs to be re-examined. We need to be looking at some alternative medicine practices. I really believe that we need to look at the many Canadians who use complementary alternative medicine. I think we need to be hiring rural trained physicians with an extensive background in many different specializations. Benefits of alternative medicine will reduce pharmaceutical dependency, and we need to see that happen, especially in our mental health individuals who often get put on so many different kinds of pills. Also, osteopathy reduces chronic pain by 40% and decreases opioid use. Why aren't we investing in these doctors to help people? Herbal medicine, proven effects on inflammation, heart health, and immunity. We don't encourage our people to go to see such doctors and get the health care they really need. We need to talk about preventative health care. Sure, we need emergency care, we need all the other, but if we really focused on preventative medicine, we could reduce, here's the stat, and I love this stat. Studies show that $1 spent on prevention saves 6 to 8 in healthcare cost. Where are we putting our money? We need to put it where it's really going to be most effective.
Thank you to all candidates for your answers, and now I will proceed with question number 2, and this time James Harris will begin to answer that question first. Equity is enshrined in the Canada Health Act of 1984. Access to all medically necessary care must be paid by public funds and does not depend on your ability to pay. Access is not dependent on where you live, according to the Act. Over the last 7 years, we have seen access in rural Ontario significantly eroded by closed ERs, primary care and specialist shortages, charges for medication, diagnostic tests, nurse practitioners, and surgeries in private clinics. What is your vision and plan to improve public health care, taking in mind the consideration of the principles of compassion and equity of access?
Yeah, to kind of build on the point that I built the last time, we are going to stop in the Ontario NDP. We're going to stop the privatization of things like our public health care system, things like the home care and long-term care. You know, for-profit care providers compromise quality and reliability of care. Like during COVID, if you had the chance of being in a public or a privately run long-term care facility, you know where you wanted to be. You wanted to be with the public system because that's where people were safe. That's where the service motive was in place and not the profit motive. And that's the sort of thing that we need for our health care. So we're committed, you know, to making sure that things stay public. We're committed to making sure that things are paid for through the public. We're going to invest $4.1 billion over the next 4 years to connect people to team-based primary care close to home. That's what we're committed to in the NDP.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Selwyn.
Thank you. Did you all receive your $200 bribe checks? Do you know the true cost of those checks? $3 billion. $3 billion. And by the way, it was borrowed money. So they borrowed $3 billion to hand out just before a snap election. And here's the thing. Only about half of that amount was actually committed to health care. Half. And they did that just before the election. And by the way, they're going to spread that money. I think it was 1.8 billion, if I'm going to be fair, spread out over 4 years. So, you know, it's about priorities. If the priority is there, I'm convinced with all of the waste going on that the money is there. The money should be put towards health care. I would like to see people paying for health care with their OHIP card and not with their credit card. The Liberal Party is going to particularly pay attention to what's happening in rural communities. It's a shame that rural communities are seeing routinely their hospitals close or services cut. We're going to provide incentives for doctors to serve in rural communities, and I'm telling you this, I will fight like hell to see that rural hospitals stay open and stay public.
Answer. Pardon me?
Sorry, could you hold your mic a little bit closer?
This is just an extension of my previous answer, where responsible government puts your rerouted tax money from million-dollar spas and roads and tearing up farmland to where we need it the most, in healthcare in those areas. Again, hire our nurses back, get our doctors back. There wouldn't be any need to hire outside European doctors to serve here. Drop the mandates and get our house in order first. That's what our party would be looking at first and foremost. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, being accountable for where the health dollars go, in fact, where all the funding goes, is a top priority. I agree with hiring back those who were fired over COVID mandates, but you know, we need to expand nurse practitioner roles in this area. We desperately need these kind of individuals. We only have in Ontario 4 nurse practitioners for every 100,000 residents. Other provinces have 7 per 100,000. What are we doing wrong? We need to rethink what we're doing. We need to encourage young students to pursue these professions. The other thing I would focus on is our elderly. We are in an aging population that's riding, and we need more seniors' homes, but the kind that, not high-rise homes, I'm not talking about those, but if you can get the seniors together and have housing and community, and then have healthcare services for that group, that they would share a doctor, share a nurse practitioner, and they would have service very quickly. That's just one of the things that's kind of on my mind and on my heart, and I think we could do it.
Thank you, and our last speaker is Joe Loughy.
So it is so unfair to rural Ontario that our hospitals are closing, that our emergency rooms are cut back to being Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, right? We deserve so much better than that in rural Ontario. And the other night, Paul Vickers said that, sorry, there's no magic wand to just fund these types of things. But there is a magic wand when you want to build a $60 billion tunnel under the Highway 401. There is a magic wand when you want to build Highway 413, or when you want to hand $2 billion to a private firm to build a luxury spa on Ontario Place. There's a magic wand for all of that. So absolutely, this is about priorities. This is about prioritizing rural healthcare, and it's also about prioritizing rural Ontario and small town Ontario. And this actually ties really nicely into housing. We need to stop sprawling housing onto prime agricultural land, which is what we're doing presently in Ontario, destroying 320 acres of prime farmland every single day for urban sprawl. We need to start reinvesting in our small communities and building up in our in developed urban areas. It revitalizes neighborhoods, it's good for the economy, it's good for the planet, it's good for the people, and it will be good for healthcare as well.
Thank you, candidates. The next two questions from the organizers relate to climate, and the first question will be answered by Selwyn. The question is, the provincial government's panel on housing affordability concluded that sprawl is not the way to solve the housing crisis. Yet Ontario's Planning Act and provincial planning statement has been repeatedly altered to promote sprawl while doing little to address affordable housing needs. If elected, how will you ensure development addresses our housing crisis without destroying natural areas and precious farmland? Selwyn?
Can you hear me okay? No. How about now? Now? Yeah, there we go. Okay, thank you for that question. Having been involved in municipal politics for quite some time, I can tell you that this is an issue that we wrestle with all of the time. I've always been a proponent of saying that we need to focus development in our primary settlement areas. This is why when I was warden, I called for the creation of a task force on Owen Sound and Hanover. Why? Because those are the two wholly situated primary settlement areas in Grey County. When we focus development on our primary settlement areas, we actually protect farmlands. We protect green spaces. Why? Because that's where the infrastructure is. It's easy to expand it there, but it also prevents that urban sprawl. So I would say that anything that erodes from that takes away from the primary objective being in planning to focus the majority of your development in primary settlement areas is not a good plan unless you're doing that. So certainly that's a focus that I will be advocating. I think anyone, it just makes sense, doesn't it? You don't have to be a rabid environmentalist to know that that just flat out makes sense.
Being in the upcycling business, recycle, reuse is kind of a thing we've looked into. There's areas in your community that could be redone already, that can be looked at as a rebuildable area. There's buildings that are empty that could be reused for certain housing quarters. And if your spending is correct, you shouldn't have to go outside the area in farmland to build subdivisions. We have enough area already developed that need more developing, that we can use right now. Thanks.
Next we'll have Ann, but before I let Ann start, if you're developing a question as you hear this stuff, raise your hand and a volunteer will come and pick that up and put it in with their questions for later. Okay, Ann?
Thank you. Ontario's average house price is now at $850,000, a 45% increase since 2020. That's astronomical. Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound has seen rents rise by 38%. So affordable housing is becoming less and less available. And yes, there have been new builds and new subdivisions. We live in just outside of Dundalk. There's 3 new subdivisions in Dundalk. But who can afford those homes? They begin around $700,000. And the people in the area aren't the ones buying those homes. Now, people moving up, that's wonderful if they can purchase them. But why can't we build affordable, smaller homes for young families? And actually, there's a lot of young families looking at back to the land, getting a property that they could just actually have more room to grow in a sense, but to grow literally, be able to grow their own food, do things like that. I think that will really help them in the future, teach them skills, help them. So we need to look at the whole picture of what's best for the community, but also what's best for the new generation coming up. How can we get them in their own property? And how can we do that effectively?
Next we'll have Joel.
Thank you. So protecting rural Ontario against urban sprawl is exactly why I sought election in Municipal Council in Grey Highlands in 2022. Because like Ann said, Dundalk is now, essentially an extension of the GTA, and I don't want to see that happen to Markdale, and I don't want to see that happen in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. It's the wrong way to build housing. Right? It's extremely expensive to build the housing. It's extremely expensive to buy the houses when they're built. It's extremely expensive to maintain the infrastructure, which drives tax prices way up later for municipalities. And the reason, let's be clear about the reason that we're building houses that way through the More Houses Built Faster Act, the Urban Sprawl Act. It's because it benefits Doug Ford's developer friends. That's it. That's all, right? It's the green belt, but all over Ontario. So to protect our farmland, the Green Party of Ontario has a very robust plan for a food belt, which is like the Green Belt, but it will be for protecting our prime agricultural land, which is crucial if we're going to maintain our food sovereignty. And that's particularly important in this very uncertain international economic times. Owen Sound is exactly the kind of small city that should be vibrant. Its downtown should be thriving. We should be incentivizing the building up of those brownfields and the vacant lots. We should be making connected and caring communities. It's possible. It's all about provincial zoning policies, and the Greens have a plan for exactly that.
James, for your answer.
Thank you. The Ontario NDP, we are going to protect the Greenbelt in Ontario's prime farmland. We are going to protect the Greenbelt in Ontario's prime farmland by focusing growth sustainability within the pre-2022 urban boundaries, keeping infrastructure costs down in the process. We're going to focus on development sensibly and cost effectively within existing urban boundaries, and where it makes sense, we're going to work with municipalities to create incentives for affordable housing in the marketplace, including developing charge easements. And when it comes to, we're going to also legalize fourplexes and in all neighborhoods as of right to help make sure these sorts of things happen in urban zones where it makes sense, to make sure that we're not eating into our precious farmland.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the answers to the first question there. So we're going to the second question, and Vince will be the first to answer this one. Does the provincial government need to play a role in addressing the changing climate? If yes, what 3 concrete actions should the provincial government take to mitigate the impact of climate overheating and extreme weather in Ontario?
Could you repeat the last part? I didn't quite...
What If yes, what 3 concrete actions should the provincial government take to mitigate the impact of climate overheating and extreme weather in Ontario?
Climate's been here since the change of time. When it comes to climate change, education is the best weapon you can use with climate change. If you know what your climate is going to be, you adjust it to that need. This is nothing new. It isn't something that just happened yesterday. It's something that continuously has happened over time. What changes? Education. Educate, educate, educate. That's how you solve the climate change. Thanks.
Okay. Anne?
Disputed that the world's climate has changed and will always change. In 2022, Patrick Moore, a prominent scholar, ecologist, and one of the founders of Greenpeace, stated Greenpeace was hijacked by the political left when they realized there was money and power in the environmental movement, and changed Greenpeace from a science-based organization to political funding organization. The environmental leaders are now saying humans are the enemies of the earth. Virtually all of Greenpeace ads for fundraising are based on false narratives. These aren't my words. These are the founder of Greenpeace. He also said one of those things that is that polar bears, the population has increased, not decreased. It was at 8,000 in 1973. It's now up to 50,000. There's so much information out there. We need to sift through some of the information that we've been told. For one thing, climate change is happening because of human intervention, and that actually is not backed up by science. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change shows findings of no trend in global hurricane frequency and low confidence in attributing changes to human activity. I've got lots more stats, but I can't have them all here, so we need to think through this.
Okay, Joel, you go next.
So the question, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. So the question was, does the provincial government have a role to play in mitigating climate change? And the answer to that is yes. Absolutely, the provincial government does. Completely. And so interestingly, this is also tied to housing and affordable housing, because urban sprawl is incredibly bad for climate change, right? Not only does it spread out onto farmland and natural areas, wetlands, riparian zones, forests, right, which are carbon sinks and cool the planet, all of that pavement, all of that traffic, all of those cars, extremely bad from climate change. We need to move away from this urban sprawl agenda and move towards smaller, dense, vibrant neighborhoods, walkable cities, right? This is exactly the direction we need to go, and the Greens have a plan for it. Public transportation is tied to exactly that. Why are we not investing in high-speed rail in this country and in Ontario? Every other major modern country in the world is doing it, right? And again, the Greens have a plan for that. We also need to move away from natural gas and from fossil fuels, which the Ford government is actively coupling with presently, and towards genuine, renewable, clean electricity, distributed renewable energy, and the Green Party is the only party that has a plan for that.
James?
We are going to, with the NDP, we are going to establish Ontario's first Youth Climate Corps, because of course we should be involved in this from the province point of view. We're going to give opportunities to young Ontarians to learn skills and earn a fair wage while helping Ontario communities reduce their emissions, restore their natural environments, and become more resilient to a changing climate. We're also going to invest in net zero affordable energy. We will ensure that an abundant energy supply of reliable and affordable energy towards a legislated target of achieving a net zero economy by no later than 2050, and we will make evidence-based, cost-effective investments in clean energy and efficiency from a mix of non-emitting sources, storage, and conservation. We will complete long-planned priority transmission investments to deliver abundant clean energy to expand industries, and we will restore the power of conservation authorities to review such projects that threaten our farmland, our groundwater, and our wetland systems.
Selwyn?
Thank you very much. I think it starts with, first of all, honoring our commitments to the Paris Agreement and the targets that we have committed to there. Thank you, Mom. I want you all to remember that liberals got us away from reliance on fossil fuels. And Doug Ford came along and scrapped all of the green energy programs that the liberals had in place, and we end up now with the carbon tax. So liberals will, of course, protect farmland. We're going to axe Doug Ford's carbon tax and develop a Made in Ontario environmental action plan in conjunction with the federal government and other provinces that will protect Ontario's land, water, air, biodiversity, and communities. We're going to reduce emissions and reliance on cars by investing in public transportation, as Joel has mentioned. We're going to prevent the development on the Greenbelt, of course. We're going to promote diversity in energy supply and bring back the green energy programs that have been lost. We're going to reverse the funding cuts, of course, to conservation authorities. And we're going to triple the area of nature protected areas in the province and strengthen the Great Lakes Protection Plan and the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. And of course, we're going to establish a province-wide deposit return system for beverage containers and incentivize the use of recovered materials in public procurement projects.
Okay, thank you. And now we have some questions that we will have been taken from the audience to answer, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to give us their answer. So the first question is on affordability, and we'll be beginning with Anne as the first responder. The average household income in Grey Bruce is $72,000 after taxes. What, if any, plans do you have to bring in higher paying jobs? Ann Gillies?
I actually didn't hear how much the average was.
It was $72,000 per year after taxes.
That's the average income for most
That's what the question says.
I can't imagine the average income for most people in Bruce Grey being $72,000.
It would be household, probably, meaning
Okay,
husband
sorry.
and wife or
So
partners.
you know what? I'll pass because I've misunderstood the question. I don't want to take up the time. Go
It
ahead.
does say household, yeah. Okay, all right, I'll ask another question. Oh, sorry, yes, Joel.
Okay. So this is a great question. It's about having a strong economy. And right now, especially again, in light of the tariff threats from south of the border and all of the international insecurity, having a strong local economy is very important. I'll say that we have a very strong plan for Buy Ontario and Support Ontario. The Greens have always been the party of localism. The Greens have always been the party of supporting community. You know, one of those good paying jobs that used to be common was nurses. Right? Speaking of rural healthcare, part of the reason we're in a rural healthcare crisis is because nurses got so underpaid with Bill 124 that they walked away. It was criminal, literally criminal. It was in court, found it to be a criminal bill. So how about paying our nurses a living wage, a fair living wage again? Right? Good jobs, personal support workers, so elderly folks can age in place. Investing in renewable energy actually creates good jobs right here. TC Energy doesn't create any good jobs really in Meaford. Having renewable distributed energy, solar panels on people's properties, that actually creates the industry to build the panels and the industry to maintain the panels. And bringing in good jobs is important, but bringing down the cost of living is probably even more important, and that starts with housing. We need to build real, affordable housing right here in Owen Sound and in our small communities around Ontario.
Thank you, Joel, and we'll continue with James Harris.
I think that when it comes to the best kind of businesses are local businesses. These are the kind of businesses that keep the money they make in the local economy, and these are the sorts of things that the Ontario NDP are really interested in supporting. You know, when it comes to, like, we've got a lot of small business owners in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound, a lot of whom are looking to retire in the next little bit. And one of the things that we want to do with the Ontario NDP is to work to invest, or work with federal government to support successive planning, so when these businesses are sold, they can go to allowing owners to form employee ownership trusts and to put in place incentives for the creation of trusts and employee-owned cooperatives so that owners can pass on their businesses to the people who've been working with them and have been building the legacy that they've been building over the years. We're not going to increase taxes on Ontario small businesses. We're going to work with small business community to develop and deliver the supports that they need to create good jobs, including looking at the changes to commercial rental protections and many other things, like with regards to tariffs and things like that. We're going to restart the Ontario Business Cost Rebate Program to ensure that tariff-impacted industries provide immediate relief on property taxes and energy costs for companies that keep jobs here in Ontario.
Thank you. Selwyn, please. Selwyn Hicks.
To properly address this issue, we need to take a step back. I think one of the things that's really important for us to take a look at is the quality of our education system. And what we see happening right now in our education system is abysmal. So we need to address that, not just at the secondary level, but at the tertiary level as well. What's happening with our colleges and universities and the funding that's being cut there, that's going to have a real impact on our ability to be competitive in the global market. In terms of business, Liberals are going to launch an Ontario growth strategy to ensure that Ontario becomes a competitive place to set up and grow a business. We'll work to remove interprovincial trade barriers so that Ontario business can access larger domestic markets. We're going to reduce the burden of red tape. And by the way, here's the big one. Small businesses will have a tax cut almost in half, exactly, and the threshold, so they go from 3.2% to 1.6%, and we're going to also raise the threshold for it, so from 500,000 to 600,000. This is going to allow more businesses to qualify, and this will save the average business about $18,000 a year, freeing up money for investment into machinery and new hires.
And Vince Grimaldi, please.
With a combined income of $70,000, I'm guessing that that's still a struggle to survive in a single home. We've looked at self-employed people in this area, and in our region, there's more self-employed people in this area than I think it was 57% of people in this area were self-employed. There's no incentive for self-employed people to do anything other than their regular job. Our minimum wage is way too high. Our taxes are way too high. You can't afford to hire anybody because your minimum wage is far outreached that these guys can't pay these guys. So things like HST has to be dropped. Consider minimum wage dropped a little bit so these people can function right and hire people. That's the sort of things that we're looking at to make things easier for people in this area. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, and we'll go on to the next question.
Okay, the next question, and I believe Joel will be the first to answer this, and this comes from the chair of the Tobermory Food Bank. I know we were one of 22 food banks in Grey Bruce. O'Share served 25,000 meals last month. We are in a food insecurity crisis. How would your party respond to this crisis?
So this is such an important question. at the last debate, it was noted that since Doug Ford was last elected in 2022, that food bank usage has gone up 25%. But what they didn't say is that since he was first elected, it's gone up over 300%. Right? It is such a desperate situation out there for so many people, and it is so sad, and it is so unnecessary, and it is not the Ontario that we deserve. It really, truly is not. Food insecurity, again, going back to border insecurity and tariff insecurity, we are losing 320 acres of prime agricultural farmland in this province every single day. Since Doug Ford first took office, 815,000 acres, almost 1 million acres of farmland destroyed, paved over, and taken out of production. We cannot provide our own food if we pave over the farmland that provides it. It's impossible. Right? We need a good, strong public procurement policy in Ontario so that Ontario farmers it's easier for them to get their wares to market. We also need to tackle the grocery store duopoly that is controlling the prices of our groceries and gouging consumers every single day. It's a tough thing to tackle, but we need to go after it now.
Thank you. Now, James.
Thank you. Yeah, times are tough and getting tougher. One of the things that the Ontario NDP want to do is to get a grocery rebate for people who are struggling to put food on the table. This is going to be based on how much the cost of essential groceries like milk, bread, and vegetables have increased under Ford, and it's tied to the income and number of people in your household. We're also going to crack down on price fixing and other unfair practices, establishing a new consumer watchdog to keep food prices fair. We're also going to work on creating 60,000 new supportive housing units province-wide. This will allow people living in encampments in the shelter system to move into safe, permanent homes while connecting them to mental health care, addiction treatment, and other ongoing supports. When it comes to make sense, the cost of we will upload the cost of housing, emergency shelters, and homeless prevention programs back to the province while maintaining locally focused delivery through municipal service managers.
Thank you. Now, Selwyn.
So this is a topic that's very personal to me. I grew up in Jane Finch, abject poverty. My mother raised 6 kids on her own, and things were not all that great for us. So this is very personal to me. I'm also very aware that there are people in my community today living in tents with the winter that we've been having. And Doug Ford is criminalizing homelessness. He's criminalizing it. Talk to me about it after the debate and I'll be happy to tell you more. But what we're going to do is, with over 200,000 people in Ontario who are homeless, in Grey Bruce County there are 3,400 applicants on the affordable housing wait list. There's a lack of transitional housing and supportive housing. It makes it very difficult for people to move into stable housing. Liberals would implement all of the recommendations of the Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force within 2 years. I personally, within days of my election, will be reaching out to the Grey Bruce Poverty Task Force. I have an ongoing working relationship with them, and I will be working with them to reach all of their targets. Go to their website. They have 3 pillars. I will be working with them on that immediately.
Thank you. Now, Vince.
Hi, again, it boils down to responsible government. Relocating taxes where they're supposed to go and minimizing some of the regulations to building. We're so over-regulated, it's almost, you can't breathe. We have to lighten up on some of these rules on building to afford to build houses. And that's where we're looking into mostly. Thanks.
Thank you. Anne?
Thank you. 1 in 7 Ontarians are now relying on food assistance. It's not going to get better over these next few years. Not the way the economy is going. It looks like it's doing okay, but I'm not so sure it is. In fact, I think it's going to take a real downswing. We need to encourage local food production. The Netherlands actually just began co-ops, food co-ops, and which takes it from, of course, the field to fork, right? But they're bypassing grocery stores so that people on low income can actually buy at wholesale. Why can't we do that? You know, we need to produce community gardens for people who are homeless, for those who are on assistance. What better way for them to begin to have some hand-ups in producing their own food? We need to look at those things and encourage small landowners to produce more. Loosen the regulations, I agree with Vince, and reduce taxation for those earning under $40,000 per year.
Thank you. Just a reminder that if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and someone will bring a paper to you or collect your question. The next question will be answered first by James, and it is, will you commit to working to lower the voting age and giving young people a voice?
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know what the NDP policy is on it, but I expect that we're interested in democracy and having people that are able to participate in, more people participate in the democratic process is always a good thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what the official NDP policy is, but young politically engaged people being able to vote just to me seems like a benefit to society.
Thank you. And Selwyn Hicks, please.
I've been involved with this for quite some time. As a young person, I challenged the government of the day when I was living in Toronto that young people ought to have an active role in those power bodies who make decisions that affect them. So I would suggest, look at it. In the Liberal Party, you can vote for a leader at age 14. You become a member of the party and vote at age 14. I think age 16 would be an appropriate age, down from 18. And I say that because that's the age at which you can get a driver's license. What a big responsibility you take on at that time. So why not look at age 16? It's interesting, during this election, there's a very short period of time, only one school invited us to, make a presentation to the students, but there's going to be an active student vote at St. Dominique Savaillot here in Owen Sound. I don't know if the rest of you got invitations to do that. I applaud that. I think the more involved we have our students with the democratic process, the more they are willing to stand up and protect their environment. It's kind of like if you build a castle and you participate in building a little sand castle on the beach, you're more likely to protect it if you actually built it. And I think I want to involve young people more in their communities.
Thank you. Vince Grimaldi.
I'm not really sure. It's the first someone's ever brought that question to me. On one hand, I look at it where you don't want your kids to grow up too fast. Getting your driver's license, you grow up pretty quick when you're on the road because of the responsibility. I'm gonna sit on the borderline on this one. I would say yes. Hopefully not pushing them into adulthood way too fast. That's my answer to that one.
And sorry, Ann Gillies, please.
Selwyn, we may not share the same views and values, but I have to admit I agree with your answer that I think it would be fine to lower the voting age to 16, because I think children, well, they're just so much more aware of political things, and they're getting taught a lot of stuff in school right now. Not all of it what we want, but we want them to have some say in things.
And Joe Lowhead.
So the Green Party actually does have an official policy on this, and the policy is, yes, we want to move the voting age to 16 for all the reasons that were stated earlier. And we came up with that policy democratically, like we come up with all of our policies. We get together as a party, all members get together at a convention, and we vote on these policies because we're a ground-up grassroots organization. One of the many reasons I love the Greens. Not only do we need to change the voting age to 16, we need to change the way that we vote in this province altogether. We need meaningful electoral reform so that you don't have to vote strategically, so that when you vote, your vote counts. When a 16-year-old vote, their vote counts, and it goes towards forming the government. So yes to 16 and absolutely for electoral reform.
Start with Saul.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Selwyn Hicks. How will you support ecological farming?
Okay.
Did everybody hear that? I'm not sure I was close enough to the mic.
Ecological.
Okay. Our farm and food sector is an economic powerhouse, adding billions to our economy and supporting thousands of jobs. Now, once you pave over farmland, it's gone, and it's gone for good, and we would put a stop to that. We would protect prime farmland, including the Greenbelt, and champion a sustainable agri-food sector to support farmers and rural communities. We will leverage the Better Communities Fund to keep municipalities whole and to keep property taxes low. We would invest in the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and by the way, we offered the Ontario Federation of Agriculture exactly what they were asking for the risk management program, which is about $100 million less than what the PCs offered them. And remember, farmers are businesses, right? Farms are businesses. And so the same tax incentive that I told you about, cutting that tax in half, that will apply to our farms as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Vince.
Education in eco-farming would be number one thing that we would be pushing. The more educated you are on systems when you're planting, protecting our farmland, not biting into it, are all things that we would be adamant about. And equipment. Newer technology and equipment, like the GPS scoping and those sort of things. Researching fertilizers and stuff where I see years ago we only used to fertilize at the beginning of the year. Now I see that they're starting to fertilize 2 or 3 times a year. Those sort of farming practices need to be really looked at and thought of. Thanks.
And I think the next speaker is Joel Lally. Or did you?
No, sorry, Ann Gillies. Sorry.
So Canada imports over 30 billion in agricultural products annually. So we really need a shift to local production because that's going to reduce the dependency on importing. But you know, when I think of the farmers in our area, they are incredibly astute in what they're putting on their crops, about crop rotation, about how to manage well. They educate themselves quite well, and I think the programs that are out there with OFA and different farming programs, they are always upgrading what they need to know. Any serious farmer is already doing that. I just think we need to provide the opportunity for them to keep farming.
Thank you. Joel will be next, and I have to apologize for the crowd. I thought I'd shut my ringer off on my phone, but obviously I didn't.
Okay, so ecological farm. I don't think the Greens have a plan for this. Just kidding. So we actually have a very interesting and very robust plan for exactly this, of course. Not only do we have the only plan for protecting a food belt in Ontario, which will permanently protect prime agricultural land in this province so that it cannot be paved into housing. We also have a very interesting policy for ecological services rendered, right? And so this is already done elsewhere in the world successfully. And this means that you partner with farmers who want to maintain the ecological integrity of their land by maintaining woodlot, by maintaining meadows, by rehabilitating or protecting riparian river zones. And you work with them, you find the value of those zones, and you work with the farmers to ensure that they get paid for those zones. It works. It's done in PEI. I believe it's done in Iowa. It's done elsewhere in Europe. So we're going to model those systems to make sure that we have farms in this province that aren't just farming on an industrial scale, which of course we need food, but we need to make sure that we maintain our ecological integrity as well. So the Greens have a wonderful plan for ecological services rendered that we can help farmers help our environment, which helps us all.
Thank you. Now, James.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, when it comes to farming, farmers are generally the experts. I want to get out of the way and let them farm. And to that end, what I want to do is I want to make sure that our farmers are able to farm without worry, without concern about how they're going to be able to, make things work. And so to that end, there's currently a $250 million cap on the risk management program. The NDP would remove that to make sure that our farmers are able to farm without having to worry about if they're going to lose the farm in the process. So that's part of our thing there. Again, we're going to protect the Greenbelt and Ontario's prime farmland by focusing growth sustainably within the pre-22 urban boundaries, keeping infrastructure costs down in the process. This is what we're into. Let farmers farm, and that's what we're going to do.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, that's the end of that question. Everybody's answered that, so.
Okay, our next question will start with Vince answering. What will you do to help vulnerable seniors, especially as their numbers increase, so we don't have a repeat of what happened during the pandemic? Vince?
Secure our facilities for our older generation people. They've done their time. It's up to us to take care of them via housing, food, and medical care. That's as far as I know right now. Never thought of that one either.
Okay, thank you. And Anne? Can you hear the question?
There's a lot of echoing.
Sorry. What will you do to help vulnerable seniors, especially as their numbers increase, so we don't have a repeat of what happened in the pandemic?
I think is my mic working? Okay. My mom's a vulnerable senior. She's 90 years old, and she's happily ensconced at the Seasons. No, not. What is it, Bob? Sound Gardens. Gosh, I lost where she is. Anyways, but what I think, I go back to looking at building small seniors residences. How about residences that hold 12, not big ones, that if we had them in smaller facilities and were able to make sure that they had really good health care in those facilities, that we had nurse practitioners that could go in and check on them and come back out. They're not having a lot of intermingling. I think that would be very helpful in those kind of situations.
Okay, thank you. And Joel, please.
We have a disproportionately elderly population here in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound, and that number is going up. It's getting even older. We need to make sure that seniors are able to age in place, that they're able to age in their home if they choose to age in their home. And that means that we need to have more PSWs, more nurses who are able to go into their homes. And we can do that. We can pay for it. And again, this type of care up front is actually less expensive than dealing with it downstream in the medical system. We need to have long-term care homes, again, good, public, long-term care homes in our communities so you don't have to travel 70 or 150 kilometers. And the folks who are living, the seniors, of course, they're going to be on limited incomes. We need to bring down their cost of living when they are aging in place. We have a plan to get every one of those types of homes a free heat pump in their home to bring down the amount of electricity that they need. It's also better for the environment. And we have a plan to bring down the cost of hydro for them by ending the rebates for the wealthiest in Ontario, which are going to them for their hydro, and redirecting it right to the lowest income, including seniors in this province.
Thank you. And now, James, sorry, my mind's going tonight.
No problem. Yeah, the NDP will stop the privatization of home care and long-term care. For-profit care providers compromise on quality and reliable care, but we will ensure that people can live at home longer as they age with reliable and expanded services to the support they need. Yeah. And will also attract and match long-term care and home care workers to communities where they have shared cultural and language skills. We're going to introduce a monthly caregiver benefit for those who are caring for loved ones at home. We will make it easier for seniors to age at home safely with reliable access to home care. We will create a seniors home safety grant to help with renovations. And we'll make sure that healthcare workers are paid fairly, introducing wage parity across healthcare systems so that workers in home care are paid the same rate as their counterparts are in hospitals.
Thank you, James. And Selwyn Hicks, please.
So this is another one that's very personal to me. I was warden during COVID, during the pandemic, and we had 3 long-term care homes that we were responsible for. I'm so proud of our workers. We did not lose a single life during the COVID period. Not one. I'm also very proud of what we've been doing with our paramedic outreach program, and that needs to be expanded. Some of you are probably familiar with it. Paramedics really care. They're just awesome, and they get to know these people, and those people who are the frequent flyers, they know them, so they can do preventative medicine with them, and I'm really proud of our paramedic workers there as well. We need a new model for long-term care funding in the province of Ontario. Long-term care is no longer like the seniors' homes of the past. They are like hospitals, folks, and in fact, many people go directly from a hospital bed to a long-term care facility. So we need to fund them more like we're funding hospitals. I'm running out of time. We need to provide supports for seniors to be able to live in home for as long as they're able. And this is actually where they will tell you they want to live. And by the way, we are going to take the HST off home heat and hydro, which will help seniors, and we're going to provide 20% rebate for people who upgrade the facilities that they have, such as heat pumps.
Thank you. Now the next question, we'll start with Ann Gillies. What are your thoughts on mining in the Ring of Fire?
Mining in where?
In the Ring of Fire.
In Northern Ontario. Yeah, I don't even know. What do I think of? I can answer what I think of mining generally. I think as much as we like and want the green energy of solar panels and we want windmills, they are not always reliable, and we must have backup energy. So I think, now I don't know if I'm crossing my lanes here, but mining and energy kind of go together. And so I don't know anything about the northern mine, but certainly would have to do some research on that.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
Ontario is a resource-rich province. It's one of our very many strengths. And as we move towards renewable energy and as we move into the 21st century, those resources are going to be in very high demand. That's the reality. And so we're going to be mining in the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario. That's true. When we do mine in the Ring of Fire, we need to make sure that we do so with the utmost ecological integrity. That needs to be absolutely paramount. No pollution of our pristine northern lands. Also, when that wealth is generated, and it will be generated, we need to be providing good jobs in that community, good union jobs in that community, I might add. And also, when that wealth is generated, it needs to be redistributed back to the traditional keepers of that land, the First Nation people of Northern Ontario. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. James?
Yeah, thank you. When I think about the Ring of Fire and mining in general when it comes to Northern Ontario, I'm in agreement with my colleague here that it needs to be, when we come to the environment, we need to do it right. You know, we can't just do open pit stuff. We need to do it right. Right. And, I also think about a lot about how it relates to our relationship with First Nations people. And when it comes to that, Styles-led NDP government will establish a government-to-government relationship with First Nations. Any policies impacting them will be guided by the principles of free, prior, and informed consent as a matter of law across government, and will formalize a commitment to tripartite consultation process between First Nations right holders, the provincial government, and resource industries on any proposed plan impacting First Nation territories. An NDP government would ensure that any resource revenue agreements that resources are equitably shared and flow to First Nations, including 100% of mining tax revenues.
Thank you. Now, Selwyn Hicks.
Thank you. I'm not going to try to bamboozle you and pretend to be an expert on mining. Okay, so I have very little knowledge about mining, if I'm going to be very, very honest. But off the cuff, I would say that with the tariff threats that are imposed, we have to look at all of our industries. And, that's one good thing that's coming out of the tariff threats. It's that it's forcing us to examine what we have and what we can do better. And I certainly think that our mineral industries present robust opportunity for us to respond to the tariff threats. I wholeheartly agree about consultation with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. I can tell you that when I was warden, one of the first things that I did, frankly, is encourage us to settle the ongoing claim that had been going on for 25, 30 years. That's settled under my leadership as warden. So thank you. So there you have it. I'm not an expert on mining, and I'm not about to bamboozle you about being an expert on mining. So I have a lot of learning to do in that area.
Thank you. Now, Vince Grimaldi.
I think mining should have a little more regulations to it. I think Canada gives up its resources far too easy to outside communities other than Canadians. I think it should be attached to education in our own country. I think it should only be used to develop products in our own country for the most part. That's the way I see it, and if we do mine, those mining pits should be converted back to either farming communities when they're done with it. They should be cleaned up, and that should be the cost of the people mining. Thanks.
Thank you. And Joel will begin with the next answer. The question is, Ford is supporting a $7 billion pump storage plant in Meaford, built on the Niagara Escarpment, threatening endangered species and the water of Georgian Bay that we all depend on. What is your stance on this issue? Joel?
Fantastic question. So the Green Party of Ontario, as far as I know, is the only party that has an official answer for this question. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Greens, was up here in Meaford 3 weeks ago speaking with me in opposition to this very, very bad project. And the reason it's a very bad project, let me be clear, the reason it's a very bad project is not because necessarily that it's pumped storage. Pumped storage can be good if it's a good project, and this is a bad project. Here's why. The IESO twice looked at it and twice told the Ford government it's too expensive, it's too out of date, it's too antiquated, and there are better methods out there. And the Ford government looked at that and said, we're doing it anyway. We're going to hand a $7 billion contract to a $100 billion fossil fuel company from Alberta and Texas, and we're going to give them $285 million Ontario taxpayer dollars to do it. That is wrong. That is a Greenbelt style scandal. We deserve better than that. It is the wrong sort of project for Meaford. It is the wrong sort of project for Ontario, and I stand opposed.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. I think when it comes to big energy projects like this, too often we've moved ahead without the First Nations, Indigenous land protectors. And so anything that we're going to do, we need to make sure that we include Saugeen Ojibwe Nation with this as we go forward, if we go forward. And one of the things that they said here they put out a letter in the end of January where they're excited to start doing some environmental assessments, and the NDP are right there with them. You know, the NDP agrees that energy planning decisions should be based on evidence and the public interest, not self-serving politics or special private interests. And the costs and the benefits and the risks of all major energy projects need to be thoroughly assessed and scrutinized by the Ontario Energy Board. The process needs to be transparent and independently reviewed process that includes participation by consumers and environmental stakeholders, I should say. And Ontario needs a reliable, affordable, and environmental sustainable energy. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. Selwyn?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. It's noteworthy that this project was twice denied or declined by the independent electrical systems operator, and is only going forward because Doug Ford intervened. This really is a PC party pumped storage facility when you look at it that way. So with that said, let me be clear. I cannot endorse the PSP project as it currently stands. There are too many, thank you, Mom again, she moved. There are too many unanswered questions for me. I did take the time to reach out to certain groups, and I sent out a letter with my position. The following is an excerpt from the letter that I penned, setting out my position. It reads, I'm skeptical of the value of the pumped storage plant proposal. I would insist that any provisional investment in moving it forward comes at the expense of ensuring that there are no issues or questions remaining from the previous phase. I would insist that with every next step, the community remains engaged and aware of the full scope of the impact of the project. I personally would champion the absolute need for this project to have to meet the highest standards environmentally, and that the project actually has a net benefit to the residents of Meaford and all of Ontario. My no will be most easily found in that standard.
Okay. And the next speaker is Vince, please.
I find it odd after 2.5 years, 3 years, how the opinions have changed up here. This was brought up in the last election where I said the numbers don't work. Joel agreed with me, but now his party's the only one that has a plan for it. Saul criticized me because I wanted to take a look at the shoreline to see what kind of rock it was. It didn't work 2.5 years ago. The numbers don't work now. Now they've just added the health issue to it. In my opinion, it was worthless from day one.
Okay, and Anne, please.
Thank you. I I agree that it needs either to be scrapped or come under some really strict environmental assessment, because there's just so much with that is unknown. And why can we not utilize the water systems we have right now? Why do we have to go this route? Why can't we rebuild the dams? Why can't we have the power generating that we used to have? Because all that's just been let go. And the money that's being spent on this project could diversify all of these other energy projects throughout the riding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question will start off with James Harris. With the push for electrification, how would you recommend increasing electrical generation to meet this demand? Where do renewable sources fit in the mix?
Thank you. Yeah, like I said before, we're going to invest in a net zero affordable energy with the NDP. We're going to ensure an abundant supply of reliable and affordable energy towards a legislative target of achieving net zero economy no later than 2050. We'll make evidence-based and cost-effective investments in clean energy and efficiency from a mix of non-emitting sources, storage and conservation areas. We will complete the long-planned priority transmission investments to deliver abundant clean energy to expanding industries. And, some of the things that occurs to me as well while I'm thinking of it is that, Quebec has a lot of hydro energy that is currently selling to the States, which it might not be doing in the future. That's something that we can do. We could buy cheap energy from Quebec, from hydro sources. It'd be really nice and clean. Yeah, I think that's something we can do.
And I would just remind again that Liberals got us away from coal, from the reliance on coal. That's very true. Doug Ford, once again, dismissed all of the green energy projects that we had on the go, and now we have the carbon tax. So I agree with the person who's asking the question. I think they're suggesting that there needs to be a mix of energy, and we do need a mix. We need to look at air, the windmills, the solar, water projects, and nuclear will be part of the mix. And by the way, energy storage will also be a part of the mix. So, while we may want to poo-poo on energy storage projects, I think the right energy storage project is going to be an important part of the mix as well.
Thank you. Now, Vince?
For a guy that spent most of his life researching renewable energy, Ontario itself has more resources to create energy than probably any other country in the world. It's a shame that we don't develop it or have any incentives for our young people to dive into this type of business. Right now, I can think of a dozen different ways in this community where it can directly affect your electricity bill instead of bringing it back to the grid. These technologies are simple, cost-effective, and they work 24/7. And there's regulations against it. They won't let me do it. So my job right now would be to open that up so we can start to share those technologies. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Anne?
I think as I've listened to you, and I know from my own research that we need every source of energy in the future. We can't afford to shut down one because we think this is going to take over. We must at least keep the ones that we know are secure until the other ones are proven. I think that we need to look at how can we keep expanding? How do we expand the energy to the sources, from the source to the people? And the battery storage isn't a really good long-term fix. We have to keep producing more energy. So that means gas, oil, nuclear, maybe small nuclear reactors, decentralized nuclear. It all has to be looked at because we're going to need more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Joel.
We know that we actually do need to move away from some of our energy sources. We need to move away from fossil fuel consumption. We absolutely need to in this province and on this planet. That's known. We can't continue to burn natural gas in Ontario for energy production on a large scale. That's true. The Greens have a wonderful plan for exactly this, distributed renewable. It should be much, much easier for you to put a solar panel on your roof of your house or of your barn to provide your own energy. Why isn't it? Because Doug Ford killed the program because it doesn't benefit his fossil fuel buddies, and that's true. Something interesting to consider about this as well is that in the future, talking about battery storage, as we move...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. In the future, as we move towards electric vehicles, which we are going to, and we need to, we are going to see that is a form of battery storage in itself. So the excess nuclear energy that's being produced at Bruce Nuclear at night that they want to pump uphill and then sell to us at prime rates later during the day, we'll be able to store that energy in our EVs, in our driveways in the near future. It's coming.
We'll start with Selwyn this time.
Okay, the next question is directed to Selwyn first. Previously, this riding has been fortunate in electing representatives with an honorable tradition of voting according to their conscience, at times even against their own party. Paul Vickers' absence tonight shows he is controlled by the Premier, not us. When you are elected our representative, will you vote at times against your party on behalf of constituents of this riding?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important that a leader lead by listening to you. I have a 16-year track record in elected politics, and no one has ever been critical of Selwyn Hicks's leadership, not a single person. I haven't heard a criticism yet. And so I will continue to lead in the way that you know I lead, and that's by listening to you. An example of that is this TCE project. I reached out to various communities and did some research, and I came up with a position. And I will advocate for that position. I will always advocate for the people that I serve, because you're the boss, not me. I work for you, and so I will always be listening to you. And if at times that means that I have to take a position that's different than my party, because my people in my riding, who are my bosses, are telling me that this is what they want to have done, then so be it. That is democracy. But quite frankly, let me just say that the Liberal Party is a party that I feel very comfortable in. But I can tell you this, I like a lot of things about the NDP. There are many good things about the Green Party. And so I can get along with a lot of people. And that's what you need to do to work in government, is be able to get along and to find commonalities. That's the thread here. People who get into politics and think they're going to solve problems immediately, they become lone wolves.
Thank you. Vince?
Question. The new Blue Party doesn't tell me what I should think or do on any topic. I disagree with a lot of the views, especially on their climate when it comes to energy. I disagree with a lot of the things they do, but we do find common ground where we can analyze our own district to give our constituents what they need. If I say to you, this is what I think we can do here, my head office isn't going to call me and say, no, you can't do that. They're going to work with me, and they're going to work with you to get that job done because you want it. That's how we work. And that's the way I like it. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, this is a very small party. From just started in 2016. We only have 2 candidates running in all of Ontario. But the only time I would vote differently than my party is if it was some issue on a moral stance or truth stance. If there's something that I don't adhere to with the party leadership, then I would go to them first and foremost, and we would hash it out. And then we would decide where we go from there. But it is for the people and to represent those people. So what's the best thing we can do for those who voted for us? That's where we need to stand.
Of Ontario is the only party that encourages its MPPs to vote independently at Queen's Park. It's the only party that will not boot a member of parliament from caucus if they vote against party line. I've had many conversations with Mike Schreiner about exactly this. Paul Vickers reminded me about Wild Bill Murdoch the other day. He was booted from caucus. Right? If Selwyn wants to be independently minded and vote against the Liberals, he will be booted from caucus. Sarah Jama and the NDP, booted from caucus. The Greens vote independently, and we work across party lines. Your member of provincial parliament is supposed to represent you at Queen's Park, not the party leader in your riding. That's how it's supposed to be. When you elect a Green, you get your voice at Queen's Park. That's what I will do for you.
I didn't join the NDP because I wanted it to be the James Harris party. You know, I'm joining the NDP because I like what they stand for. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the NDP is that I don't have to convince them that what's good for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound is good for Ontario, because we're already all on the same page. We're not making any hidden things about our policies or what we want to do. You know, we're very clear, we're very plain. We figure it out in caucus, we figure it out through convention, we figure it out through our democratic process. And this isn't the place for me to make up policy on the spot, and I'm okay with that. You know, if you guys like what the NDP stand for, so do I. And I don't ever anticipate having to vote against them for that, you know? So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next question will start with Vince. And the question is, how will your party work with First Nations in the spirit of truth and reconciliation?
In way of adapting to some of their needs. We've talked about this several times. There's needs that they have and needs that we need to persist with. I think we've had some conversations with the Indigenous about certain beach lines and property issues and those sort of things. So I think we're really open to dealing with the Indigenous, and we've had no troubles with them as far as I know to this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Anne?
It was my understanding that the Truth and Reconciliation Project was a federal project. Now, I'm not suggesting that doesn't overlap for provincial, but there was a lot of work and a lot of money and a lot of interaction went on for the Truth and Reconciliation Project. I'd have to go back and see exactly what was accomplished. I think, you know, it comes down again to treating one another with kindness. Like, we are all God's children. We're all created equally. And so I think when it comes to truth and reconciliation, that we look at the past. We don't live in the past, but we want to move forward. We have to look at moving forward. And how do we do that together as a community?
Thank you. Now we'll have Joel.
When I think of truth and reconciliation, I think about when I saw Indigenous author Jesse Wente speak, and he said he doesn't like the term truth and reconciliation because our relationship with the First Nations was never conciliatory to begin with. And I think that that's a very good observation and the right place to start. We need to, when we work with First Nations communities, we need to work with them openly, we need to work with them transparently, we need to work with them with an understanding of the historical damages that have been done. I think that's it.
Thank you. Now James.
Reiterate that with the NDP we have respect for First Nations. Styles-led NDP government will establish a government-to-government relationship with First Nations. Any policies impacting First Nations will be guided by the principles of free, prior, and informed consent as a matter of law across government. We'll formalize our commitment to the tripartite consultation process between First Nations rights holders, the provincial government, and resource industries on any proposed plan impacting First Nation territories. And can I just say as well, we will take immediate action to clean up the mercury in the English Wabigoon River system, remediating the mercury buried upstream from the grassy narrows, and connecting people who are impacted by mercury poison with the care that they need.
Thank you. Now we'll have Selwyn.
Thank you. I will repeat that once again, under my leadership, Grey County settled a decades-long land dispute. I attended their hearings respectfully, and I learned an awful lot. I attended their sunrise ceremonies, and they welcomed with open arms. And so I will continue that relationship that was established as warden. I will continue that as your MPP. I think we have to approach our Indigenous brothers and sisters with respect, with dignity, and with love, quite frankly. Never about them without them. Never about them without them. I am currently chair of the Bruce-Grey Child and Family Services, and Indigenous peoples across Canada have been calling for some time to have responsibility for their own child welfare system. I can tell you very proudly that Bruce-Grey Child and Family Services supports our local Indigenous peoples having charge of their own child welfare system, and we will support them right till the end to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. So this will be the last question for the candidates tonight, and I guessing that it might be their most difficult question, simply because I doubt that it's been asked before. Autism and special needs children are growing. The autism file is failing to support those families and children, especially rurally, and services are spread out so that families who need daily IBI or ABA services must travel hours to get these services and support, which is unrealistic, forcing families to live in cities. These children need access to support and services locally. What would be your solution to bring support and services rurally for children who are on the autism spectrum? And we'll begin with Anne, please.
That's a really good question, because we all know that the incidences of autism have grown exponentially over the last 30 years. So healthcare hasn't caught up, and I'm not sure how it catches up with all of the needs in many ways. But you know, I want to go back to preventative medications, and I'm not suggesting, you know, when a child has autistic needs, they're going to need a lot of extra supports. But I think having the instruction in the home, having life skills, and I would say food preparation, all of those kind of things, helping the parents with those kind of things to make sure the child themselves has an adequate diet, very healthy, and that the services for the child are continuous, the learning services, and how they are able to keep the interaction progressing. I don't know a lot about autism, but I would think that those are some of the areas that might need to be looked at.
Sorry, Joel?
You're right, we haven't heard this question, but I appreciate this question. This is, of course, a question of health care as well, just as caring for anybody with special needs is a question of health care. And it's deeply unfair that anybody should have to travel hundreds of kilometers, hours, to receive any of the health care that they need. It doesn't need to be that way, especially in a province as rich as Ontario. We need to start reinvesting in our rural health care again. We need to prioritize rural health care, small town health care again. Not $100 billion for a tunnel under the 401, not $10 billion for Highway 413, not $2 billion to a luxury spa on Ontario Place, but healthcare in rural Ontario.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. In Markdale, we have a really wonderful facility called the Community Health Center. So it's a not-for-profit health center where it provides a whole basket of healthcare needs. We can afford to put one of those, and we need to put one of those in every riding in Ontario. Again, a question of priorities, absolutely possible, and we have a plan for that.
Thank you very much. James?
Thank you very much. We will invest in education services with a new needs-based funding formula, because a lot of where the first level of stuff happens for people with autism is in school. And the Ford government has cut education funding by $1,500 per student since 2018, leaving our schools with fewer teachers, larger class sizes, and just fewer resources to help students who are autistic like this. Thank you. In a consultation with school boards and education workers, we will review and fix the school funding so it meets the needs of kids. We will also clear the wait list of the 28,000 children and youth waiting for mental health care. We will ensure children and families have access to autism services, particularly in rural communities where services are even scarcer. We're also going to expand OHIP. But I won't go on with that. You guys are good. Yeah.
Okay, are you finished?
Yes.
Thank you. And Selwyn Hicks, please.
So this is another one that's personal to me, comes close to home. I have 4 children. 3 of them required an IEP. I don't know if you're familiar with that, an individual education plan. For anyone whose child isn't absolutely in the center, what a challenge. So 2 of those 3 children had learning disabilities, and the other one, actually, she was way above everybody else, and that became a problem too, because she needed to skip grades, and that was a challenge. So I would say my heart goes out to anyone who is trying to access services for a child with exceptional needs like autism. It is brutal, and I know that firsthand. We had to go to Toronto quite often to get supports that we needed, and I can only imagine that there are families out there who actually go broke. I'm not kidding, go broke trying to get the supports that they need for their children. So I would just say that the Liberal Party has, in our education plan, you will see that we are going to be boosting mental health professionals and teaching assistants, because when my kids went to residential schools and got back to the regular stream, it's not that easy, because in the special schools they have all the things they need to learn. When they get back to the regular stream, they need support so that they can carry on their learning and their progress. So we will absolutely be providing more supports for families who are struggling to get those special aids.
Thank you. Vince?
I'm going to do my best to explain this one. Years ago, I was asked to build a fiber optic network that had colors in it. A white light will transmit 12,800,000 two-way conversation, where a copper wire will only transmit 12. And they wanted different colors in this fiber optics to have different channels, emergency channels, education channels, certain different channels. I don't see why we don't start developing that for medical, for specialty stuff like autism, where you can tap into doctors anywhere in the world and get your treatment via Zoom. I think that we're there right now. I'd like to see that happen, even though I already have that technology. I'd like to see that put in place, but it's an expensive ordeal, because now you have to outfit all your bell lines with colored lasers instead of just white light. That would be a doable project within the next 2 years. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the questions we have time to do tonight. We have a whole stack here still that we haven't had time to get to. And sorry about that, folks, but we have time constraints. So now each candidate has 1.5 minutes to give their closing remarks, and as it turns out, Joel will be the first one to start.
So first off, thank you everybody for coming this evening. I really appreciate it. It's so important to get out and meet your candidates and listen to what we have to say. So in a minute, Selwyn's going to tell you that I ran in 2022 against the Green Party, which isn't true. I ran for electoral reform because we need it so badly in this province. You shouldn't have to vote strategically. You should feel good about who you vote for. You should feel like your vote counts, and it should count, and it should go towards forming government, right? We have had either blue or red or blue or red or blue or red or blue in this province for a century and a half, and it's not working. If you want real change, vote for real change. The Greens offer real change. It's a different form of government. It's a different form of representation. It's why I am so proud to be your Green candidate in Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. If you want green, vote green. We can do it together.
Thank you. Now James Harris.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming out. Thank you to the Grey Bruce Climate Action Network and the Grey Bruce Health Coalition for hosting this. And Ontario NDP government is on your side from day one. In the first 100 days, we're going to fight rising costs by getting people who are struggling a monthly grocery rebate, by creating a new consumer watchdog, and stop price fixing. We're going to hire more doctors by fast-tracking approvals for more family health teams and community health centers, and clearing the paperwork for doctors so that they can spend more time with their patients. We're going to fast-track building homes that you can afford. Homes Ontario, the largest home building program in generations, is going to build 1.5 million homes, and we're going to implement real rent control to protect tenants. We're going to defend Ontario jobs by taking a lead role in Team Canada and directing government agencies to buy Ontario. And we're going to clean up corruption in Queen's Park. We will bring back integrity to the government and put an end to wasteful schemes and bad deals. Ontario should be a province full of opportunity, a place where you can find a home, easily access the health care you need, where kids are supported from day one and have the best shot in life, where you can get a good job and the cost of the basics doesn't take up your whole paycheck, a place where you're excited for the future. And that's what you get with James Harris and the New Democratic Party, a party where I don't have to convince my colleagues that the interests of Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound are the interests of Ontario, because we are already with you.
Thank you, James. Now, Selwyn Hicks.
This has been an unprecedented election campaign. Doug Ford wanted an election where even a guy like Paul Vickers could win. Paul doesn't want to be your voice. He just wants to be your choice. Tonight, I heard from yet another community that demands change. But unless we rally around one candidate, Paul will win and nothing will change. But ask the questions. Who has the most experience? I've held elected office for 16 years as a councillor, deputy mayor, and warden. I've held the positions, sat at the tables, and been to the conferences and meetings where provincial and local politics collide. I was your warden during COVID crisis where there was no rule book.